The sound of clinking silverware and the soft hum of family conversation surrounded Anna as she sat at the head of the dining table, her fork paused mid-air. Her eyes flicked around the table, settling briefly on the familiar faces of her family. Her father, Richard, seated at the far end, and her mother, Margaret, beside him. The air felt thicker than usual tonight. The usual warm, familial chatter seemed distant, replaced by a cold undertone that Anna couldn't ignore. Her father's eyes narrowed as he looked at her, his voice low but carrying the weight of years, of disappointment. "You think you'll make something of yourself, Anna? You've been dreaming too big for too long," Richard said, his tone dismissive as he leaned back in his chair. His fingers drummed absent-mindedly against his wine glass, as though the idea of Anna's dreams was a joke to him. "You're not cut out for success. People like us don't get ahead by chasing fantasies. You'll never be anything more than what you are now, struggling." Anna's heart skipped a beat. She swallowed the bile that rose in her throat, trying to steady her breathing. The familiar sting of her father's words was sharper than it had been in years, each syllable slicing deeper into the fragile remnants of her confidence. Her mother didn't say anything. Margaret's eyes, as always, held that distant, practiced look, calm, composed, but entirely uninterested in intervening. She had never been one to confront Richard, especially not in front of the children. Anna's younger brother, Daniel, sat beside her mother, quietly poking at his food, his eyes briefly meeting hers before quickly darting away. There was no help coming from him, not now, not ever. The silence grew heavier. Anna's fingers tightened around the edge of her glass. The years of playing the dutiful daughter, hoping that one day her family would see her for more than just a shadow in their picture-perfect world, felt wasted. The expectations placed on her since childhood, the pressure to conform, to fall in line, to never dream too loudly, had crushed her sense of individuality. "Dad, I know I can do this," Anna replied, her voice surprisingly steady, though she could feel the lump forming in her throat. "I've been training for years. I've worked harder than anyone you know. I'm not giving up on this." Her father's eyes darkened, a tight smile forming on his lips, as though humoring her. "Hard work won't get you anywhere if you don't have the right connections, the right family name. You're chasing a pipe dream. Reality isn't as kind as you think." The words echoed in her mind, each one like a reminder that her dreams were irrelevant to those who had power over her life. They weren't the dreamers, and neither apparently was she. For a moment, Anna felt the weight of the world crash down on her. She had been determined to prove her father wrong for so long, but in this moment, sitting at the dinner table with her family, her mother, her brother, the people who should have supported her, she felt more alone than ever. As her father's words lingered in the air, the quiet became unbearable. Margaret finally broke the silence, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let him speak, Anna. He's right. Maybe it's time to accept your place." Anna's chest tightened at the coldness in her mother's voice. Margaret had always been the silent enforcer of Richard's authority. She never questioned him, never argued. And in that moment, Anna realized that her family had never really believed in her dreams. They had simply tolerated them. She sat there, her mind racing. Was she truly delusional? Was everything she had worked for simply a waste of time? The fear of failure began to creep in, whispering doubts in her ear. But deep down, she knew. She had fought for too long to let this moment define her. If she was going to succeed, she had to prove them wrong, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever doubted her. Just as she opened her mouth to respond, her phone buzzed on the table. Her father shot her a sharp look, as if she had broken some unwritten rule. But Anna didn't care. She grabbed the phone, excusing herself from the table. Stepping into the hallway, she looked at the screen. It was an unfamiliar number, but something about it felt urgent. A deep breath, A quick glance over her shoulder, and she answered. "Commander Anna," the voice on the other end said, calm but direct. "We're calling you in. The Pentagon is offering you a leadership position. You've been selected." Anna froze, the phone slipping slightly from her hand. Her heart skipped, a rush of disbelief flooding through her. The conversation that followed felt like a blur. But one thing was clear. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't just some fleeting opportunity. It was the breakthrough she had been waiting for, the validation that her dreams weren't just fantasies after all. The message was clear. The Pentagon called her Commander Anna. Her world shifted in that moment. For all the years of doubt, for all the dismissive words thrown her way, for all the moments she had been told she wasn't enough, this call, the same one she had dreamed of, was her answer. But as the call ended, Anna stood there still gripping the phone. The silence around her now felt different, charged with possibility, but also with the question, what would she do now? The next move, the real test, was hers. Would she let her father's words define her? Or would she walk away from this dinner, a woman with her own future, her own identity, and a life waiting to be led? Anna stood frozen in the hallway, her phone still pressed against her ear. Her mind raced to catch up with the words she had just heard. "Commander Anna," the voice on the other end had said. The Pentagon? Her? It felt impossible. After all the years of her father's ridicule, her mother's silence, the constant feeling of being dismissed, Anna could hardly believe it. "Are you still there, Commander?" The voice was patient, but Anna could hear the urgency beneath it. "Yes," she replied, her voice shaky despite her attempt to steady it. "I'm here." She quickly cleared her throat, trying to wrap her head around what was happening. "Are you sure you have the right person?" Her heart was hammering in her chest. She needed this to be real, but part of her feared it was a prank, a cruel joke. "This is the Pentagon," the voice confirmed. "Your application for leadership has been reviewed. You've been selected for a command position. We'd like you to report immediately for training. Your role as commander is confirmed, Anna." She felt her legs go weak. It wasn't a joke. It was real. A wave of dizziness overcame her. Anna had worked toward this moment for so long, but she had never expected it to come like this, not while still carrying the weight of her father's cruel words. She held the phone tighter as her father's voice replayed in her mind. "You'll never succeed." And yet, here she was. Commander Anna. The very title he had tried to strip from her, the very dream he had crushed with every dismissive word, was now in her grasp. "Are you still with us?" the voice asked again. "Yes," she whispered, trying to regain control of her emotions. I'm still here." The next few minutes passed in a blur. The details were a haze, the location, the date, the urgency. All she could focus on was the weight of the moment, the weight of the decision. This was everything she had fought for, the position she had earned despite all the odds. But more than that, it was a victory over the life she had been told she would never have. "Are you ready to take this on, Anna? This isn't going to be easy, but we believe you're the one for the job. Do you accept?" Anna paused. There was a sense of finality in the air, as though a door had opened before her, and she had only a brief moment to decide whether to step through. She could feel the weight of her father's words pressing down on her shoulders. You're not cut out for success. But she knew better now. This wasn't just about proving him wrong. It was about proving to herself that her dreams were worth fighting for, no matter the cost. "I accept," Anna finally said, her voice stronger now, filled with the certainty she had lacked just moments ago. A deep breath followed. As she ended the call, the silence of the hallway enveloped her. It wasn't the quiet of doubt anymore, but the calm before a storm of change. She turned and walked slowly back into the dining room, still reeling from what had just happened. The family dinner, once the setting of her father's harsh criticism, now felt like a distant memory, its weight no longer heavy on her shoulders. Even as she entered, Anna knew the real challenge was just beginning. The call had marked the beginning of something new, something that would force her to confront not only the family that had doubted her, but also the world that had underestimated her. She sat down at the table again, but this time her posture was different. She was no longer a girl trying to fit in. She was a woman who had just been handed a powerful future. Her father barely looked at her, lost in his own thoughts. But her mother's eyes briefly met hers, a fleeting glance that carried more than words ever could. It was as if, in that moment, Anna could feel the weight of her mother's judgment. Not condemnation, but something else, something like reluctant acknowledgement. "Did you hear what I said, Anna?" Her father's voice broke the silence, but his tone had shifted. There was no anger, no bitterness, only cold indifference. "I think you're making a mistake. This isn't what you were meant for." Anna paused, the familiar sting of his words barely scraping the surface of her confidence. She met his gaze, no longer filled with fear, but with quiet defiance. "No, Dad," she said, her voice steady. "I think it's exactly what I was meant for." The next few days passed in a blur of preparation. Anna couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on anything that wasn't her next move. The phone call from the Pentagon echoed in her mind, an affirmation of everything she had worked for, and yet the weight of it was nearly suffocating. It wasn't just about proving her father wrong anymore, it was about becoming the woman she had always aspired to be but had never dared to fully step into. She stood in front of the mirror, staring at the uniform laid out on her bed, its crisp lines and polished buttons mocking her doubt. The role wasn't just a title, it was responsibility. It was power, and Anna wasn't sure if she was ready for it. Could she really lead others? Could she stand firm in the face of the challenges ahead? Her father's words haunted her, echoing in the back of her mind like an ominous warning. "You'll never succeed. You're not cut out for this." A bitter taste rose in her mouth, but she swallowed it down. She couldn't afford to let him, or anyone else, decide who she was. With a deep breath, Anna pulled on the uniform. It felt heavy at first, as if the fabric itself was laden with the weight of expectations, but as she buttoned the jacket and adjusted the collar, something shifted inside her. The uniform wasn't just a symbol of authority, it was the culmination of everything she had worked for, everything she had sacrificed. She wasn't going to let fear stop her now. Her phone buzzed, breaking the silence of the moment. It was a text from her mother. "I saw the announcement. I'm proud of you, Anna, but don't forget what really matters. Family always comes first." Anna stared at the message for a moment, her fingers trembling slightly. Her mother's words felt both like support and like a warning. "Don't forget your place. Don't forget where you came from." She sighed, locking the phone screen and placing it down on the desk. This wasn't the time for lingering on doubts. She had made her decision, and now she had to follow through. A knock at the door startled her. "Come in," Anna called, taking one last look in the mirror. The door opened, and there stood Lieutenant Commander Reeve, her future superior, as calm and composed as ever. Her eyes flicked over Anna, an unreadable expression crossing her face for a split second before it vanished. "Ready?" Reeve asked, voice steady as always. Anna nodded, though a wave of nerves swept through her again. She didn't trust her voice to stay steady, so she simply followed Reeve out the door. The drive to the Pentagon was a blur. Anna barely registered the passing streets, the faces outside her window. Her mind was consumed with the same question. Am I enough? She was about to enter one of the most powerful institutions in the world, but was she truly ready? Could she handle the weight of it all? Her mind raced back to the family dinner. The disappointment in her father's eyes, the indifference in her mother's voice. She had been told all her life that her dreams were too big, too unrealistic. And yet, here she was. As they approached the Pentagon, Anna's pulse quickened. The massive structure loomed ahead, like something out of a history book, its cold, stone walls an impenetrable fortress of power. She had spent her life fighting to be seen, to be heard. Now she was about to walk into the heart of it all. "Remember, Anna," Reeves said, her tone serious as they approached the entrance. "You were selected for a reason. Trust yourself, and don't let anyone convince you otherwise." Anna looked at her, taking in the weight of her words. She knew Reeve wasn't just talking about the job. She was talking about Anna's entire life up to this point. The air inside the Pentagon felt different, charged with purpose, as if every step was scrutinized by unseen eyes. Reeve led her through the halls, past officers in full uniform, their eyes flicking over her with curiosity, respect, and perhaps a bit of skepticism. Anna felt it all, the weight of being watched, the pressure of needing to prove herself worthy of the title Commander. They reached a large briefing room, and Anna took a seat at the head of the table. The others filed in, senior officers, analysts, strategists, each one more experienced, more qualified than she felt. They sat silently, awaiting her to speak. Moment of silence passed before Anna stood, her legs slightly unsteady, but her resolve hardening. "I'm Commander Anna Rodas," she began, her voice steadier than she expected. "And I am here to lead, not just because I have the title, but because I've earned it. I may not have the history you were expecting, but I have the heart, the determination, and the grit to do what needs to be done." She paused, taking a deep breath. "You may doubt me. You may question my place here. But I will prove that I belong, not just to you, but to myself." There was a moment of silence before a few of the officers nodded in acknowledgement. It wasn't applause, but it was respect. The days following Anna's arrival at the Pentagon were a blur of intense meetings, strategy sessions, and briefings. She was thrust into the thick of it, proving herself day after day, her doubts and insecurities pushed to the back of her mind by the constant pressure of responsibility. It was as though the moment she walked into that building, she became someone else, someone stronger, someone more capable. Yet, amid all the chaos and challenges, Anna knew one thing. She couldn't avoid the past forever. She had promised herself that the moment would come when she'd have to face her family again, her father in particular, and prove to them that she wasn't the failure they had painted her as. It wasn't just about the job or the title anymore. It was about claiming her place in her own family's narrative. It was about making sure her name didn't disappear from their history, like they'd tried to do so many times before. And so, the phone call came, just like she had expected. Her mother's voice, formal and distant, with that same practiced tone that had always made Anna feel like a visitor in her own home. "Anna," Margaret said, her words clipped, "we're having a family gathering tomorrow night. Your father and Daniel would like you to come. It's time you showed up, don't you think?" Anna stared at the phone, her chest tightening. She could hear the unsaid words in her mother's voice, the quiet expectations, the subtle pressure. They were extending an invitation, but Anna knew it was more than that. It was a demand. She took a deep breath, her resolve firming. She wasn't. The girl who had walked out of that dinner months ago, unsure of her place in the world. She was a commander now, and she would walk back into that room with her head held high. No more cowering in the shadows. The next evening, she found herself standing at the door of her childhood home once again. The house was the same as it had always been, untouched by time, rigidly perfect in its carefully manicured lawns and meticulously polished marble floors. But to Anna, it felt suffocating. The walls of this house had always been lined with expectations, with duty, but never with the warmth of understanding. Anna knocked once and the door opened. Her mother stood there, as poised and composed as ever, her face unreadable. "Come in, Anna," Margaret said, stepping aside. "Dinner is about to start." Anna followed her into the dining room, where her father and brother were already seated. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Daniel, her younger brother, sat with his usual air of superiority, his eyes barely glancing up from the phone he was tapping away at. Her father, Richard, didn't even acknowledge her entrance. He was focused on the stack of papers in front of him, scribbling notes as though she didn't exist. The silence was oppressive, more than Anna had expected. It wasn't just a meal, it was a battlefield, and Anna had a seat at the table. "Sit, Anna," Richard finally muttered, his tone cold. His eyes flicked up, but his gaze was empty, distant. "We've got a lot to discuss." Anna took her seat, her back straight, her hands folded in front of her. For a moment, she let herself look around at her family. Her mother's piercing gaze, the subtle judgment in Daniel's expression, her father's complete disregard, it was all too familiar. The little girl inside her wanted to shrink back, to retreat into the shadows where she had always been. But the woman sitting at the table now was different. "Dad," Anna said, her voice steady, not a hint of fear in it. "You wanted to discuss something?" Richard raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything for a moment. Then he leaned back in his chair, his hands folded in front of him, staring at her as though she were a problem to be solved. "I saw the announcement. The Pentagon has made its choice. But Anna—" He paused, letting the words hang in the air like a threat. "You know this isn't going to be easy. They're using you, you know. A woman in charge? You think they really believe in your abilities, or are they just trying to tick a box?" Anna's heart rate quickened, but she didn't flinch. His words stung, but they no longer held the power they once had. "No, Dad," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. "They believe in me. I don't need you to approve of my success anymore. I've earned it." Richard's lips curled into a thin smile, but there was no humor in it. "Earned it? You've done nothing but climb over people to get here. You think this is all about you? That this makes you special?" Anna's pulse surged, but she kept her calm. "Yes, it's about me. It's about everything I've fought for. It's about proving that I'm not just a name on a family wall. I am more than what you've told me I am." The room fell silent. Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes flicking between Anna and their father. Her mother didn't say a word, but her gaze was now fixed on Anna, sharper than it had ever been. Richard exhaled slowly, his eyes narrowing. "I still don't believe you have what it takes." Anna stood up suddenly, her chair scraping harshly against the floor. The decision had been made. She had fought her entire life for this moment, and now she wasn't going to back down. Not from her family. Not from anyone. "I don't need your belief, Dad," Anna said, her voice rising with authority. "I've never needed it. I'm not here to ask for your approval anymore. I'm here to make my own path." With that, she turned on her heel and walked out, leaving the family table behind. The day Anna walked into the Pentagon for the first time as Commander Anna, everything felt different. It wasn't just the enormity of the building, its cold, imposing walls or the endless hallways lined with military plaques and insignia. It wasn't just the sheer weight of the responsibility she was carrying. No, it was something deeper. Something that she hadn't quite been prepared for. The Pentagon wasn't just an institution. It was an entire world unto itself. The air seemed charged with a constant hum of authority, the kind of silent power that could crush you if you weren't careful. Anna could feel it as she walked through the front doors, her boots clicking on the marble floor, the echo following her, as if announcing her arrival. Her mind was a whirlwind. She had prepared for this day for years, but nothing could have truly prepared her for the reality of stepping into this world. The conversations she'd had in the quiet of her apartment, the self-affirmations in front of her bathroom mirror, they felt insignificant now. Here in the heart of military power, Anna wasn't just proving herself to her family or to anyone in her past. She was proving herself to everyone who had ever stood in her way, to a system that had nearly erased her. Anna had always known she could do it. She had always believed she was capable, but here the pressure was real. The stakes were higher, and she had no choice but to rise. Her first briefing was a blur. She sat at the head of a long, polished table, flanked by senior officers and military analysts who all looked at her with varying degrees of skepticism. Anna had studied their faces as they entered the room, noting the subtle glances, the half-smiles, and the raised eyebrows. They were waiting for her to falter, to prove their assumptions right, that a woman like her had no place leading in a world dominated by men. They wanted her to show weakness. They wanted her to prove she didn't belong. But she wouldn't. "Commander." "Rhodes," one of the officers began, a seasoned older man with graying hair and a commanding presence. "We've read your credentials. Impressive, but we're not here for a resume review. We're here to get results. You're walking into a situation that's more complex than anything you've probably dealt with." Anna met his gaze, steady and unwavering. "I've dealt with worse, and I'm ready for this. Give me the mission, and I'll make sure we get results." Her voice rang clear and strong, and for the first time since she had entered the room, she noticed a slight shift in the atmosphere. The officers exchanged quick glances. The skepticism remained, but there was something else now: respect, a grudging acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, this woman knew what she was talking about. The meeting continued, but Anna found it easier to hold her ground. Her every decision, every word, every action had purpose. She wasn't just playing a part. She was owning it. She was no longer that young woman who had walked out of her family's dinner, dismissed and overlooked. She was Commander Anna Rhodes, and she would command this room the way she had been taught. But the pressure was never far. As the meeting wrapped up, one of the senior analysts lingered near the door, his eyes trained on her. "Commander," he said, his voice low but not unfriendly, "I respect your confidence, but I've seen many like you come and go. The Pentagon is a game of politics and power. You think you can make it here without playing the game?" Anna felt a flare of irritation, but she kept her voice measured. "I'm not here to play games. I'm here to get things done." He gave her a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We'll see." The challenge was clear, but Anna wasn't about to back down. She had spent too many years battling internal and external doubts. She had fought for this role, fought to be seen for who she was, not just who her family had tried to make her. This was her moment. That night, Anna couldn't sleep. Her thoughts were a constant stream of self-doubt, but there was also a part of her that had never been more sure. She was starting to realize something that had been simmering in her for years. She didn't need to prove anything to her family, to anyone. She was the one who needed to believe in herself, and that was what mattered most. In the morning, the real work began, but Anna was ready. The briefing had only been the beginning. Now she had to prove herself with results. She would lead. She would fight for every soldier under her command. She would carve her own path, not one defined by the past, but one built on her strength and resilience. Her team was ready. They may not have fully believed in her yet, but they would. And when they did, they would see what she was capable of. As Anna looked out the window of her office, her eyes scanning the distant skyline, she realized that the hardest part of the battle wasn't the military strategy, the briefings, or the long hours. It was the battle within herself. The fight to trust that she was enough, that she had always been enough. And now, she was about to prove it to the world. Anna wasn't sure what she expected when she walked back into her childhood home, but she knew she wasn't prepared for the awkward silence that greeted her. It had been months. Last family dinner, the one where her father had belittled her dreams, dismissing her aspirations without a second thought. That night she had left the table, humiliated and heartbroken, convinced that no matter what she did, her family would never see her as anything more than a disappointment. But today things were different. She wasn't the young girl who had fought for approval anymore. She was Commander Anna Rhodes, freshly minted leader of a Pentagon operation. She had proven herself on the battlefield of bureaucracy, cracked the wall of family rejection, and carved her own path into a future that only she could define. As Anna stepped through the door, she could hear her father's voice in the next room. The familiar gruff tone of Richard Rhodes, her father, issuing orders to no one in particular. It was like nothing had changed, but Anna knew better now. Everything had changed. Margaret was in the kitchen, her back to the door, carefully, arranging plates as though nothing had shifted in the last few months. She didn't even turn when Anna walked in, but Anna could feel her presence, the tension in the air that always seemed to hang heavy when her mother was around. "Anna," her father called from the living room, still without looking up. "You made it. Nice to see that you haven't forgotten where you came from." The words hung in the air like a challenge. It was a statement, not a question, as if she had somehow betrayed them by rising above their expectations. Anna's pulse quickened, but she remained calm. This wasn't a time for anger. This was her moment to take control of the narrative, not just with the military, but with her family as well. "Nice to be here, Dad," she replied evenly, walking into the living room. "It's been a while." Her father gave her a quick glance, his lips curling into a thin, unreadable smile. "So, you're really doing this, huh? All this commander business. Seems a bit far-fetched." "Don't. You think?" Anna's chest tightened, but she pushed through the tension. "No, Dad. It's exactly what I've been working for. And it's exactly where I belong." She held her ground, her posture straight, her eyes unwavering. She wasn't asking for his approval anymore. She didn't need it. Her father scoffed and waved his hand dismissively. "Well, good for you. Glad you finally found somewhere to put your delusions to work." Anna's heart skipped a beat. The words hit harder than she wanted to admit. But she wouldn't let him see the effect they had on her. She couldn't afford to. "I didn't do it for you," Anna said, her voice quiet but firm. "I didn't do it for anyone but myself." Margaret finally turned from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her eyes met Anna's, a brief flicker of something, maybe pride, maybe resignation, flashing across her face. "Anna, you're not really going to keep fighting this, are you? We didn't raise you to cause trouble." The words were spoken with an almost cold finality, but Anna knew them for what they were. The words of a mother who had always expected her to fall in line, who had never understood the fire that burned inside her. "No, Mom, you didn't raise me to cause trouble. You raised me to be someone I'm not," Anna said, her voice unwavering. "And I'm done pretending to be what you want me to be. I'm here because I've worked for it, because I earned it, and because I'm not going to let you or anyone else erase who I am ever." Again, the room went still. Her father's smirk faded into something unreadable, and her mother stood frozen, the dish towel still clutched in her hands. There was no shouting, no dramatic confrontation, just the quiet weight of Anna's words, hanging between them like a challenge. For a moment, no one spoke. But the silence didn't feel suffocating anymore. It felt like Anna's voice had finally broken through the walls that had always been there, walls of expectation, rejection, and silence. For the first time in years, Anna didn't feel like a stranger in her own home. You think you've earned it? Her father asked, his voice more subdued now, almost a whisper. He didn't look at her. Instead, his gaze was fixed on the glass of scotch in his hand, swirling it absently. I know I've earned it, Anna replied, and it's time you stopped pretending I haven't. Her father didn't answer. He didn't need to. Anna could see it in the subtle shift of his posture, in the way he set the glass down a little too sharply on the table. He didn't want to admit it, but for the first time in a long while, he knew she was right. Anna turned to leave the room, but her mother's voice stopped her. Anna, wait, Margaret said softly, her tone now lacking the usual edge. Your father, he's proud of you in his way. But you have to understand this world you're stepping into. It's not what you think. Anna paused but didn't turn around. I know exactly what I'm stepping into, Mom. And I'm ready for it. With that, she walked out, leaving behind the family who had never truly seen her for who she was. But Anna didn't need them to anymore. She had her own path now, one that no one could erase. Months passed, and Anna's transformation was undeniable. She had made a name for herself at the Pentagon, overcoming the skepticism of her colleagues and leading her team with a precision that earned her respect. The weight of her role, the responsibility of command, had become a familiar burden, one that she bore with pride and purpose. Yet as Anna stood at the edge of the battlefield of politics and power, one thing still gnawed at her, the question of legacy. She had fought for this position, fought against every expectation that had been placed on her, but there was something deeper at play. She was not just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting to honor the legacy of those who had come before her, her father, her family, and even herself. The phone call had come in the middle of the night, just as Anna was finishing up some paperwork in her office. It was an unknown number, but there was something about it that felt urgent, important. Commander Rhodes, the voice on the other end said, "We need you to come to a special meeting. There's something you need to see." At first, Anna was confused. What could be so urgent? But then the realization hit. This was bigger than her. This was the final piece of the puzzle that would bring everything full circle. Her family had long since stopped calling her, but this was the one that would put her back in the spotlight. She arrived at the meeting room, her heart racing with anticipation. The door opened, and she stepped in.